Okay, I'd like to call a meeting of February 10th, 2016 to order. Mr. Novak, please read the roll call.
Robert Smith.
Here.
Maria Zapasnik. Here. Gloria Cepeda. Here. Noah Karsten.
Here.
Thomas Lima.
Here.
Shane Crellin.
Here.
Leandro Alvarez.
Here.
Gilbert Carreras.
Here.
Brittany Brazoka.
Here.
Nicoria Cerrutia. Emma Holman. Here. Patrick Hurd.
Here.
Joshua Locke.
Here.
Logan Roush.
Here.
Jose Rosario.
Here.
Kenneth Selhaney.
Here.
Jason Ingram. Scott Kane. Michelle Brophy-Behrman. Here. Mark Paolucci. Robert Santuri.
Here. Please rise for the I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now move on to the approval of the agenda. I am seeking a motion. Motion by Representative Locke, second by Representative Selhaney. So first, any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, we now move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions, and the agenda is approved. We now move on to approval of minutes of January 27th, 2016. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Representative Carreras, second by Representative Locke. So first, any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, we now move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes of January 27, 2016, please signify yes by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions, and the minutes are approved. We now move on to the open forum. Is there anyone here for the open forum? Anyone here for open forum? Anyone here for open forum? Hearing none, we now move on to officer announcements. President Robert Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hi guys, welcome back to the second meeting of the spring 2016 fall semester. I'm glad to see everyone survived the 2 snowstorms we had. It was, as always, with the snow and last getting canceled, it was a whole bottle of fun. For those of you who didn't come out last week, we had the Student Activities Fair. I was running the sandwich board for a little bit, but unfortunately there were no pictures and it was not for too long. It's made for someone taller and wider for myself. But we got me and Maria got a few sign-ups, we talked to a couple people, and I think I almost saw everyone here at a club table or just walking around signing up for things, which is always great to see at the Student Activities Fair. On Friday, I'm sitting down with, actually, spoiler alert, Speaker Lima. Friday is the next meeting of the RIC Council. For those of you guys who don't remember what that is, it's kind of the colorless version of SUG. It's a bunch of people from the different departments. Brophy-Behrman spoke before, of course, and President Cariolo, as well as Dr. Pitt, Vice President of Academic Affairs. And they talk about somewhat like what we talk about, current affairs at the college committees. On Friday, it's actually going to be a very interesting meeting. William Folks, who's the chair of the Post-Secondary Commission of Education, is speaking before the body, presumably about President Cariolo's resignation in the transitional period, as well as the search committee that's going to be coming up to make the faculty feel a lot better about the uncertain times we have ahead. So I look forward to speaking with him during that meeting and very interest. And Speaker Lima will be joining us as well for the first meeting of the spring semester. In 2 weeks, the rest of the students, the rest of the Executive Council and I will be having our hopefully monthly packets with President Cariolo and her Executive Council. It's like herding cats trying to arrange everyone's schedule, but it's 2 weeks from now, and I'll fill and write a little 1-page summary of what we talked about, and what concerns we relayed, and what concerns they told us, everything that's going up. I'm sure they'll talk about renovations, President Cariolo's own transitional period resignation, and so on, as well as any other issues on our campus. If you guys have anything you'd like to bring to the higher administration, I know Dr. Kane's not here tonight, but would like to bring it up to either perhaps one of them or another member of President Cariolo's Executive Council, you can talk to me or anyone else on the e-board tonight. Aside from that, the only other announcement I have today is I met with President Cariolo today to invite her to speak before this body. I know there's no one in this room, no students in this room, I should say, who were around the last time when President Nazarian stepped down and President Cariolo took office. So I'm going to have her speak before the body at some point this semester. I'm hoping for the next meeting, if all works out. to answer any questions you guys might have as students about your place in the transitional process, as students, as committee members, as CCD members, and what it's going to be like. I've never been around for it before. I'm really not going to be around for it because I'm graduating in May, but I want to make sure all of you are informed and know as much as possible going forward for next year as well. I'm told that sometime this spring semester, I was told February, I've heard other vague terms, that the search committee for President Carroll's replacement is going to be going on. I don't know any other details, unfortunately. I only hear things what various people have told me through the grapevine. My own hope would be there is a short list, if not a singular replacement in place by the time graduation rolls around. For those of you who don't know, President Carroll's resignation is effective, I think, 2 or 3 days after graduation, maybe as much as a week. So there's not a lot of time to find another head of the college. That concludes my formal announcements, but as you guys see, I'm speaking 2 or 3 more times during this meeting. I passed around an amended resolution. I'll explain why it's amended when we get to that agenda item. It's agenda item 7A, the Resident Hall resolution. It's one with the big flourishing signature on it. I also passed around a couple things else, other things we were talking about at the meeting. There's Dr. Kane's office came up with this performance-based funding little 1-page sheet telling about a current event that was decided yesterday in the meeting. It's about performance-based funding at the college. There's this one sheet that Dr. Kane's office came out to explain it to us. They are looking for student feedback to give back to that committee that discussed it. So any feedback you guys could offer on the subject when it comes to work would be valuable. I know I have my own opinions on the subject. I know we have some education majors in the room who have strong opinions on this subject because I was once too an education major. The other sheet is actually, do I have it here? It's only 5 pages long, which makes me wonder how law works when we're down. It's the actual law about performance-based funding for higher education, so please take a look at it. What I'm hoping to do is, Dr. King wasn't supposed to be here, but how it's going to work. Michelle Brophy-Behrman will talk, Dr. Brophy-Behrman will talk about it during her announcements, and we'll have a light discussion, and I'm hoping to table it as an issue until the next meeting, so we all have a chance to look at both the law and the one sheet, and have some time to percolate it, to think about it before we move on. And that concludes all my announcements, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Vice President Maria Zapata.
Hello, everybody. I hope everyone enjoyed the snow. I actually did because I had some nice cocoa and I didn't have to go to school. Okay, so I just have a few little things, nothing really major. The first thing is that the MC auditions for Storgies is going to be on March 3rd. Is it 2nd? I thought it was 3rd. Okay. If you are interested, if you think you have the guts to get a room full of 200 to 250 people and entertain us, please let Lori or I know about that. And then we also have the Loon, the mountain rentals, which is the timeshare the SCG currently has, and we're in the process of hoping to get rid of it. And if you are interested in renting it for the week of March, please let me know as well. And then please look into joining my committees. The PR committee, we still have some room for Parliament members. And then there's also plenty of room in the elections as well. I know it sounds like it could be a very boring thing, but it's very much needed for people to be on it. And it's actually a lot more interesting than it sounds. That's pretty much it, and have a good 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Zapata. Secretary Lori Zapata.
Hi everyone. So I'm going to start off with important dates. So first off, the next roundtable is February 24th, and it's actually going to be at 1 p.m. because it's the same day we have the PECA. The next one is MC auditions on March 3rd, and that's going to be in the ballroom. We've had 1 sign up so far, so if you have any friends that you feel have talent and can really get up in front of a group of people and entertain them, like Maria said, please tell them to email me at secretary@ricscg.org, and all they need to send me is their name and their student ID number so we can make sure they're a student. Next, save the date for April 29th. We've secured the venue for the Story Awards, and it's going to be at the Hilton in downtown Providence. I also have 4 seats left on stock, so if you want to help in the process of planning things, just let me know, and you can sign up upstairs. Vice President Sapaznik already finished putting together the programs, the place cards, the invitations, so basically everything's almost done. But if you want to give any input, you can just let us know, and it'll be gladly received. And the nominations for the Leadership Awards are open, so if you guys have any friends that you think are really great students and are out there and really doing something for the RIT campus, make sure you nominate them for an award. And And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Sapita, Treasurer Noah Costa.
Hi, guys. So we all kind of talk about our committees, but I have a few seats for Parliament members open on finance. I've been doing that all day. So I have 4 more seats for Parliament members. So if you're interested in joining the Finance Commission, please come up to the office and see us, and we can sign you up. My biggest point is that not this weekend, but the following weekend are budget hearings. So if you are an executive board member of a club or a member of a club, please remind who's ever coming to the budget hearings that they are that Saturday and Sunday. They should have a time slot already picked out. If you do not show up to budget hearings, then you lose your budget for next year. It's really a 10-minute time slot where you come and petition to the Finance Commission about what your club is asking for in their budget next year. So please remind them and let them know. And I look forward to seeing those of you who are presenting to the Finance Commission there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Treasurer. For my announcements, first off, I have 2 leaves for tonight. The first is from Representative Windrow. Dear speakers and members of Student Parliament, the deepest apologies that I, Chairman Windrow, will be unable to attend the meeting tonight due to not feeling well. Once again, I send my apologies and hope the meeting runs well. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Representative Block, second by Treasurer Costin. Any discussion on the leave? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the leave, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions, and the leave is approved. The second leave is from Dr. Scott King. I am requesting a leave for tonight's Parliament meeting. Something has come up at home at the last minute that I must attend to. Sincerely, Scott King, PhD, Interim Vice President of Student Affairs. Motion to approve by Representative Centuri, second by Vice President Zapasnik. Any discussion on the leave? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes please signify yes by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions, and the leave is approved. I switch that up sometimes. And that's all I have for leaves. And speaking of parliamentary procedure and the way we operate, I've noticed it's quiet in here, and we're a small body and growing, hopefully. But one thing I noticed, and some senior representatives that have been around a while, we can vocalize our motions. You can say motion and second, and that's a way, if you actually vocalize your motion, for me as the speaker to see and hear that you're the one who's motioning and seconding. I know we just raise our cards, and it's not this big, political powerhouse that it has been in the past. So it's not too competitive in that nature. But if you can, you don't have to vocalize. Again, whoever's card I'll see first. And if I'm looking at this side of the room, that side of the room, if you vocalize as well, that would, if you're interested in being the one to say sponsor legislation and get the person who motions it for approval, if you want to be that person, you can vocalize by saying, I motion, or so moved, or second, if you want to get the second line motion. And some non-parliamentary procedure housekeeping stuff. I'm still looking for a commission that governs our bylaws. The bylaws and adjudication commission is still, I believe it's 1 parliament seat is still on it. So if anyone wants to join that commission, we don't meet regularly. It is 2 more.
It's going to be 3.
Oh, okay. So this one, we're appointing tonight, right? Yes. All right, so there's a couple of seats on the Parliament side for that commission. And again, we only meet if there's, if this body has changes to the bylaws and sends it to bylaws, or if there's other policies that need to be changed and need to be congruent with bylaws. And also, we are the adjudication commission, so if there's any issues that come up between a club, it may come to us if someone makes a formal letter to SCG. So speak to President Smith if you're interested in joining that commission. And that's all I have. Deputy Speaker Shane Throw.
Hi. So the only thing I have for today is that I recently got my updated list for my committee. So you should be checking your emails if you're on my committee, because I want to try and get everyone together to get going with this semester. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to reports. Finance Commission minutes of January 27th, 2016. Treasurer Costa.
These minutes were approved by my finance commission, and I ask that they be accepted with unanimous consent.
Are there any objections to the minutes being approved with unanimous consent? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Reports B, Student Organizations Committee minutes of December 9th, 2015. Secretary Steve.
So these minutes have been approved by my committee, and if you actually skim through them, you'll see that the theme for the stories is in there if you're curious. And I ask that they be accepted with unanimous consent.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. We now move on to new business. Item A, resident hall resolution, President Smith.
All right, guys, so it's the one I passed out with my big version signature. I know, especially when we came back from winter break to start this off, there was a lot. I mean, whenever we come back, there's always let's go to the residence halls. But I know, especially as soon as we came back from winter break this time, they were significant in my mind because I saw these videos and social media, actual stories from really bad things in the domes, like water leaking through lights. It's not really exactly a safe place to live. So I've written this resolution as an attempt for us to sort of advocate that we do need more money to repair these dorms. The reason for the revision is I was talking to Dr. Kane a couple weeks ago, and it was during one of the open community forums for the Vice President of Administration and Finance. And he had mentioned that whomever was the next Vice President of Administration and Finance, and actually whoever's going to be the new president, was going to have to advocate for new feasibility studies for the dorms. But as it turns out, the college did all of that last year, so instead I changed it. I talked to Dr. Kane about what would exactly be the college's ideal way of getting the money to repair and renovate these dorms or perhaps build new ones without causing a significant raise in tuition or moving forward. He suggested a general obligation bond like we have for Craig Lee and Gage. The resolution reads as follows: whereas Roland College has 6 residence halls that house 7,000 students, and whereas many of these residential halls are in various states of disrepair and unsafe, numerous complaints from the student residents every year, and they've all been the same since I've been here. Whereas said residential halls are close to being in dangerous violation of numerous building codes due to age and lack of maintenance, and whereas swift and ready action is required regarding resident halls, be it therefore resolved that Student Community Government Incorporated advocates for the state of Rhode Island Providence Plantations, that should read, to issue a new general obligation bond to Rhode Island College concerning the repair and maintenance without causing a raise in room board for residential students. So before we go any further, whether we're going to approve the resolution or not, I've noticed a few grammatical errors for myself. These were some last minute changes. Can you just inform me of the feasibility study thing today? Can you raise your hand if you live on campus? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 out of 15 or 20 so students. Does anybody like living on campus with the dorms in good condition? I'm going to yield the floor to anyone who has a complaint about the dorms they want to remove.
There's mold in the vents in the hall.
Yeah,
Mold
there
in the
is.
vents in
You
the hall.
can see it in some of them, and some you gotta unscrew it to see. It's pretty gross. It's in the bedrooms and in the rooms.
Let's start with this. Well, first off, for some housekeeping, we want to need motion to approve, because you are the ones submitting the resolution. Is there a second to approve for discussion? Second by, the motion is by President Smith, second by Representative Flock. And now discussion, we are keeping a list, so if you'd like to be on discussion list, just raise your card. Representative Hurd. All right, Treasurer Cost.
I would just like to say a little tidbit. I've lived on campus for 3 years now, and I've lived in 3 different dorms, and each dorm has its own specific problems that are not the same for every single one. Brown Hall and Weber have brand new bathrooms that are really nice. Thorpe, Willard, Sweet Hall bathrooms are disgusting. The suites in New Hall are not half bad. The suites in Fort Willard, Brown, Sweet Hall are disgusting. So it varies from building to building what the problems are, so it's not as simple as the same problem needs to be fixed in every building. There were just new bathrooms put in the year before I came in Brown Hall, and I think my freshman year in Weber Hall. So that's not something they really need to worry about in those 2 buildings. But if you look at the one in Thorpe Hall, it looks like they were used by 20,000 people in a day because they're so disgusting. So that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Representative Hurd.
I agree with the resolution in general. I'm wondering about the close to being in dangerous violation of numerous building codes. Do you have any specific building codes that were,
I've heard complaints from faculty and staff that they're pretty close to being in actual violation of actual state and federal codes.
okay, because I
As
don't
in,
want,
they're not actually fit to live in Sioux.
yeah, because I
They're
don't want.
close to being in it, and if they're gonna reach that point in a couple of years, and if the college doesn't do anything, the dorms aren't gonna be usable.
Because I don't want to be making any false claims in our resolution.
None of us are gonna make any false claims, and
Okay.
I'm pretty sure all the resident students would agree they're probably not fit to live in now, let alone a couple of years from now.
All right, thank you. Representative Locke. Next on the list.
I would like to mention the bathroom. Well, the bathrooms in Weber, for the most part, got renovated, but I just so happened to be this year living in the handicap suite, even though the building itself is not handicap accessible.
No.
But so that's the one bathroom they didn't change. They renovated the floors, so the tile is roughly newer. But there's two showers. The handicap shower has a metal and wood bench that I don't think has been cleaned or touched since it was installed. It's just it's dirty. Also, I think it was towards the end of last semester, the sinks got clogged and the bathroom floor flooded with a good inch or two of water. And maintenance came in and snaked the drain, which made it worse. So they said, "Oh, don't use your bathroom for a few days." So obviously, that worked wonders. So then they had to call Roto-Rooter to come, and apparently the clog was so bad that it went from the pipes roughly where underneath the Weber to underneath the res lot. That was clogged that far.
Josh, how much do you pay in tuition to live in the dorms?
10 grand, give or take.
Which one do you live in?
Weber?
Is it worth it?
No.
Point of information.
Yes, please state your point.
It's $10,394 a year as to live in the dorms. And then just as a point, do you guys live in dorms in January?
No.
Point of order.
Oh, yeah.
You can't.
But I don't know if anyone knows, but point is that if they live in the dorms, point of information, if they live in the dorms 8 months out of the year, that's $1,300.
Point of
Yeah.
information.
Yeah, exactly.
It depends on what.
Yes,
dorm-
state your point.
Yeah.
It depends on what dorm you live in. New Hall's $1,000 more than the rest of the residents.
There you go.
Thank you. All right, and does that conclude your remarks?
The heat also has been an issue. It just started working finally, so now it's like actually hot in the suites. But up until probably right before break, it didn't work, and they left the heater itself is uncovered because they were like, "Oh, we'll fix it," and then they're like, "Oh, we don't know how to fix it."
All right, thank you. Representative Holman.
I don't even remember what I Like, there's just so many crappy things. Like, Weber's floors, I walked in them, like, one time. And, like, I was impressed, but I still wasn't fully impressed because they're still disgusting. And, like, the beds in Weber, they're gross and squeaky. Like, no thanks. But it's like, if we're paying as much, we should have better places to live. My mother walked in here to Weber, she's like, "We're paying for this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So, I don't know, I think things are expensive, but I think if you're gonna live somewhere for the majority of the year, it should be kind of updated, so like, it's not hazardous or unsafe. And I thought of what I was gonna say.
Yes.
In Newhall, I don't think the elevators have been checked in like their, like the to make sure that they're
Inspected.
inspected. It hasn't been like done in a year or two.
They were there last week.
Oh, they were? Oh, okay.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, I believe, is Treasurer Call.
See, everyone's just talking and it's reminding me of more and more things. I actually lived in the suite that Josh is living in now last year, and he is right. It is the handicap suite for the not handicap accessible building, which is really nice. I actually asked Samari about that, and they said, oh, well, you could open up the fire exit for them. Yeah, because we have access to the fire exit. So that suite is actually disgusting. In both my freshman and sophomore years, I lived in a room without heat. So one room in Thorpe and one room in Weber, countless work orders go in. I just bought a lot of blankets, got through. But it's not something that anyone should have to live in. It was, 20 degrees in my dorm room. Some nights I could see my breath. But, so the heat is a big problem in some of the older halls. Thankfully, in New Hall, you can control it. But because people can control it, they have their AC blasting for a long time. Then it gets hot outside, they open their windows, and boom, all the vents have molded. So that was something that I personally, in my suite, cleaned out of the vent. I took it right off the wall. I didn't care. I cleaned down the whole thing with Clorox wipes and what have you, and I know it's happened in other suites too. Josh mentioned something about the bedding, which I have a little personal issue with. I am 6'5" and I sleep on a twin bed, so half of my legs hang off the bottom of it because the twin extra long beds are reserved for the sports team, which I am taller than half of them. But that's just another thing, and a lot of people reference the campus dorms as jail cells.
All right, Representative Santuri.
Thank you, Speaker Lima. So, I've been sitting on, you okay there, President? I've been sitting on this body for a number of years now, way too long probably. But point is that I can't even begin to account the amount of complaints that just students in this room over the years have voiced to this body. And that's just a small percentage. I can only imagine what the larger body here feels. Now, I remember, I wasn't here for this, but I remember being told back when they try and get New Hall, the Rick students actually went and sat on the lawn of the president of the college. Now, I'm not suggesting.
They can't.
Yeah, they can't. They can't tented all. Now, I'm not suggesting you guys camp on the lawn of the president of the college.
Conditions would be better.
Yeah, I'm not saying you should camp out there, but at the same time, what you should do when just beyond passing this is make yourself heard vocally about this issue, because otherwise you're gonna get passed by and then nothing's gonna happen, and then the next year's students, even if some of you graduate, are gonna have to deal with this problem even more so. I think I've heard it all over the years. And some of the complaints tonight are pretty bad, but I've heard it all over the years in terms of heating, plumbing, security, you name it, and it's there. What I just want to add to the conversation is I think that beyond getting just the new halls, I think what needs to be done particularly is a system in place, whereas when these, let's say you get these new buildings and you guys have complaints. Right now, I'm assuming, this is, unless the policy changed from last year, if you guys make a complaint order, work order, whatever they call it here, it kind of goes off into the space and you don't really know what happens. Maybe one day someone comes to physical plant, knocks in your dorm room and fixes it, maybe they don't. But there's no accountability. You can't just go and see where, my light doesn't work now. When's that gonna get fixed? So I think in order to help these new halls in place when they do come in, I think the students, I think the students need to advocate that there's some more accountability in the whole issue, because there's obviously they can't fix every little thing that's broken at this college, but I think that if you ask them right now what's the list of things that are broken, I don't know if they know. I don't know who knows. I don't know if there's a central system or thing on this campus that can tell you that right now. And I think that's a really big concern, because at the end of the day, they're going to find a lot of little surprises when they do go to renovate these buildings. So just some food for thought. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Santuri. Next on the list is Secretary Laura Peter.
And people tell me I'm crazy for staying at home. It's like, no, I'm pretty sane. So I just did math out because I'm horrible at math, and 10 grand a year is roughly $800 a month, and that's in 12 months. So you would think that the college would want to make it more appealing for students to live here on campus by giving them a nice place to live, when you could literally get 2 more roommates, get something off campus, and still get a loan for living off campus, and still live in a better place and probably have money left over. Another idea was, I'm not sure what the process is to start a petition for the state legislature, because I'm pretty sure we can get tons of signatures from students who live on campus, their parents, their friends, people that just care about health and safety would probably sign the petition to make sure that students that live here and are trying to get an education have a safe place to study, a place where they can breathe clean air and take real baths. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Deputy Speaker Shane Crump.
What an appropriate day to wear my housing shirt, huh? All right, so as an RA, it's very frustrating being the middleman between a lot of this stuff because it's the middle of the night, something goes wrong, something's broken. Who's the first person you go to? The RA on call. The RA on call then puts in a work order, tells his boss, and he then tells whoever. I'm glad Representative Saiteri brought up his point because I was going to ask to bring that up. It goes to nowhere, and that's the thing that we need more accountability for. Noah met with the hall director about the mold in the suites. He told him about it, said, I'd like some updates about what's going to get cleaned, what's going to happen, and I don't believe he's received anything. Not to say that the hall director was not trying his best to do what he needed to do, because I'm sure he did. The only issue being is what happens afterwards. We don't know, going back to Rob's point. Another problem is all the work orders that do go through, they seem to all be short-term fixes, like put some tape over it, call it a day, and then once it breaks again, we'll get back to it. Rather than thinking for long-term, although it costs more money. Going to money, there is money in the budget, that's the funny thing, because Willard Hall, I don't know if you've been in there over the past year, and then beforehand, my first year as an RA in Willard, there was older furniture that was run down and not the best. But there was an influx of money that was used to make the furniture in the suites really nice leather furniture, new TVs, all that, which is really good. Basically, it was used to appeal people for tours. That money should be going towards getting the disgusting however old carpets that are in there with massive stains on it, ripped up, tiles, clean tiles, things like that. New furniture inside the rooms where people are going to be living, cleaning the vents, paying whoever, services, things like that, rather than appealing just aesthetics for people on tours. And that is my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, I believe, is Treasurer Cost.
This is not a complaint this time, this is more of a question. I was just reading the resolution, and in the first whereas point, it says we house several thousand students. I don't know the exact number, but I was told it.
Is it 1,000 still?
Oh, I thought it was around 1,200.
That was 2,000 something.
This would be a question for Dr. Kane.
Well, I would just like it to be.
I was always told it was always a several thousand. I've never been told the exact numbers.
I'm basing off my freshman year orientation tour thing. I was told we have around 1,200 residents, so I just wanted to make sure that it was worded correctly. So if it is thousands, it's fine. I just think we should double check, either ask the housing office for a formal number or something, so we can make sure we word the resolution correctly. That's all.
All right, next on the list is Representative Holman.
So I remember living in Weber, and the floors were disgusting. And honestly, I would rather have tile floors than rugs because like the rugs will like rip like your feet up, like, and they're gross. They've been stained, and it's like if you can't knock down the whole building, because I live with engineers, so they'll tell me why you can and why you shouldn't and everything. But like if you can make minor significant adjustments to a building to make it better, it's worthwhile because people are living in it for 8 months.
Thank you, Representative Alvarez.
So I live in Sweet Hall and it's pretty bad there. Some of those suites are 7 people per 1 toilet in the shower. That can get disgusting. 7 people. In my room, one of my outlets doesn't even work. I put a work order when I first got in there and nothing has been fixed. My roommate doesn't have in this desk, he doesn't have like a place to put the keyboard. I guess it broke before we got there and they haven't even fixed it. And then I don't even have a light on my desk, but he has one on his desk. And so last week, I think it was when it was too hot. What was it last week? We had to sleep with the AC on because the room was too hot, and they didn't want to turn off the heat because the weather got hot, and we had to sleep with the AC on. And we have a problem with like when we have problems with Sweet Hall, they take a long time to fix it. One of my friends, the doorknob fell out of his suite door, so they were a week without like a doorknob, without a working doorknob. The doorknob fell out of.
All right, including comments.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next on the list, I believe, is Secretary Zepeda.
Oh, since Shane mentioned the carpets issue in Willard, was it? I remember one of the hall directors mentioned to me once that they're only allocated a certain amount in their building's budget per year. And so she said she had to pick between ripping out the carpets or cleaning out the vents. And it was like, well, the vents got cleaned out 2 years ago. I mean, the carpets got changed so far back, so we had to pick cleaning the vents, or like cleaning the vents was more of a pressing issue, so they had to pick that over switching out the carpet. But I just thought, like, all these people are putting money into this, and they had to pick what they wanted to do, and that's it.
Thank you. Next on the list is Representative Locke.
Going back off of what Representative Crown said about long-term solutions, my freshman year, I lived in Suite, and I was on the top floor, and it was right after a big snowstorm. I had the ceiling was leaking onto my floor.
You took a video, right? Someone took a video of it.
But it was a huge brown spot on the ceiling that was just dripping dirty water, and I called the RA on call. They directed me to go to the hall director of Suite, and she finally got around to coming up to check it out, and she grabbed my garbage can from under my desk, put it under the leaking ceiling, and then said, "There you go," and walked out.
All right, next on the list is Vice President Cepeda.
I feel so bad for the new campus. I thought it'd be great because I get freedom from my parents, but I'll take being locked up in prison with them. Exactly. Going off of what Secretary Cepeda said, do we know what the percentage of the housing fees are used for like issues in terms of fixing anything that comes up? Because I know you have to pay like good $10.
The college has not released a public budget for 4 or 5 years. We have no idea. You might be able to call maybe the new Vice President of Administration for Finance, but the college has not released a public budget on its website for 4 or 5 years. And as a public institution, that's supposed to release one every year. Once again, if Dr. Kane was here, he could probably tell us. I'm just going to throw that out to the body. The college is not exactly open with its finances. To answer your question.
And also, there's, I'm sure the rest of you were back in this, we were in a conversation with somebody who will not be named, and they said that they had trouble getting funds from people to help with these issues because they were making things look good on the outside when really there were issues on the inside. So I think as disgusting as it is, we need to make things look bad so people see that this needs to be fixed.
We're not saying be slobs.
Well, yeah, of course, but like Representative Secretary said, be more vocal. Let them see that no, this isn't okay. There's an issue going on here, especially for people who have been living here for so long. I mean, you've experienced it more so than people who just start out here. So be vocal. Go ahead.
Thank you. All right, Representative Carrera.
I was just thinking, based on what he said, what does all this say about our college? You know, because I remember before I went out, I wanted to live on campus. I want to, have the whole experience. When I came here and started Suite for orientation, I was like, oh my goodness, never, never. I mean, 6 people for one bathroom. It's absurd, and I think it really gives a bad image to the college itself. That's what I was saying.
Thank you, Representative Santeri.
Thank you, Speaker Lima. Just 2 things going off that real quick. I remember for my orientation back in 2009, I actually stayed in Suite for a night, and let me tell you, I visited it back in like a year and a half ago, and didn't look at that. Time was not went well to Suite. 2 things that I just noticed because before we actually pass the resolution, hopefully, 2 friendly amendments I'd like to make real quick. One is, I looked it up, it's 1,192 students live on campus, so friendly amendment changed several thousand students to over 1,000.
Taking one at a time.
Yeah, it's fine.
Is there any objection to that amendment being rejected? Hearing none, the amendment is accepted as friendly.
And adding another T to plantation in the last paragraph, Rhode Island and Providence plantation.
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 I have friendly amendments when everyone gets
Yeah.
Are there any objections to Representative Santuri's friendly amendment? Hearing none, that amendment is accepted as friendly. All right, next on the list is Representative Frisner.
My mom is a clean freak, and she has cleaned my dorm every time, and it smells like bleach. And she will clean my friends' dorms too. She called Brown and Weber jail cells. It looked like when she used to go visit her father, is what she said. And she liked New Hall much more, still wasn't impressed. But I found mold in my refrigerator, my freezer, and my fridge when I moved into New Hall, and it took us about like 2 hours to scrub it because it had furry stuff, and it was really gross. And then also, I remember last year, the housing office sent around a survey asking us like, oh, how do we feel about only upperclassmen having singles? And everybody I talked to didn't agree with it, and then the housing office still said, oh yeah, let's let freshmen into New Hall. It's gone down a little bit since freshmen were let into New Hall. There's like pictures of penises in the elevator and stuff like that. Like it's pretty gross in some places, and those are my comments on that.
Thank you, Representative Cepeda.
Talking about vocalizing the problems, I don't live on campus, so there's a limitation on what I can do. But something that happened at my high school was I went to Classical High School in Providence, and there was a young lady who was having lunch. She picked up her sandwich, and the entire bottom of her sandwich was covered in mold. And so she took a picture of it, and she told one of the teachers in the cafeteria, and she didn't do anything about it. But the picture made it to the Projo, and they wrote an article about it. So I'm pretty sure if they get this large influx of just images of everything that's wrong Rhode Island College, they will definitely write about it, and that might be a good place to start getting people to realize that it's a big issue. That's all I have.
Thank you, Representative Holman.
So this is a matter that we need to assess, but I think it's one of those things where we need to be patient and on our ground, but still like realistic because things are expensive and they cost money. And this just makes me think of my freshman year when I lived in a communal building with like 900 people, communal bathrooms. It was disgusting. So kind of like expect what you want because you're paying for it, but just be realistic because there's far worse situations. Like I had a corner to myself my freshman year because I lived with 3 other girls. So could be a lot worse.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Pearl.
Hi. This has been an awesome conversation. All of this stuff is coming out. But I think something that we need to focus on, or maybe even just think about, is that this goes higher than just the housing office itself. Because I've had conversations with the director where she has told me about the changes that were made of basically the entire layout of the residential side of campus, with Fresh moving into New Hall and then Brown being co-ed as well. And it wasn't exactly all the housing office's decision. There are higher ups that the housing office needs to report to that they need to more or less satisfy with occupancy numbers and the amount of money and revenue that they're bringing in through the dorms. So this goes higher than just the housing office. It goes to some level of administration that's beyond what I understand as well. So it's not just what the housing office can do, it's what we need to do with administration as well, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, and no more. President Smith.
Okay, well, that was fantastic. Almost everyone spoke in the room, and I know you all have. Everyone who lives in the dorms, or even just people who are visiting the dorms, always have complaints about the dorms. If Dr. King were here, he would correct me and say residence halls, but I'll just refer to them as dorms. I've been into nearly all of the dorms. I've never lived on campus. I remember my mother was always disappointed I didn't come and live everywhere because she wanted me and my sister to have the pure college experience. And in my second year here, she really wanted me to live on campus. So she was like, here's the money for the deposit. If you want to do it, go up and sign for it, and do this, and get out of my hair, blah, blah, blah. And I went over a friend, what dorm was it? It must have been like Brown or Sweet or something. And there was some kind of mold in the bathroom. And I was thinking, I could live here, or I could just live at home and commute. It's really not that much. I don't hate my parents that much. It's not great. So this is why I wrote the resolution, because it's always the #1 complaint we get at break, besides food and parking, is the dorms. And I've always heard the dorms referred to as euphemisms such as Detroit or war zone. Maybe if some topic students would say Syria. I don't know. I don't live in there. And I'm honestly glad I don't, and that could be in the minutes. So my honest hope with this resolution I was really moving Dr. Keenan Park here today, but they're not. One meeting I missed. Is that these complaints that would be heard, maybe Dr. King could relay them, but my honest hope with the resolution is for us to pass it, then we consider the administration, and maybe somehow it makes its way to the General Assembly. Because what you're going to notice in the other things we're talking about later in this meeting is that obviously Rick doesn't really have enough money, and the fact that it doesn't have enough money is a problem that keeps cropping up in different areas of the school. In this certain case, it's the dorms. All the complaints we heard today, if you were renting an apartment and you paid your landlord that much a month, even if it was for the whole year, and they didn't fix any of these problems for the long term, they would be in violation of their lease, and there would be no reason for you to pay rent month after month after month. So it's one of always the important issues we highlight here on the college campus. Barring that, I have one friendly amendment to make. I'm very appreciative of Rob Centuri for two things. The first is a friendly amendment he did. I noticed I misspelled meditation. This is like the third draft. But there's one more friendly amendment I'd like to make, in the third where it adds, where it says dangerous violation of numerous building codes, dues. It should be just dues. If we could make a friendly amendment for that, it should be due, not dues.
Is there any objection to the President's friendly amendment? Hearing none, the amendment is approved as friendly.
And I have one more thing before we vote on whether or not to approve the resolution. President Centuri brought up the fact that there's no accountability. I love that Representative Centuri brought up the fact that there's no accountability system for work. I'm never going to hear the end of that. There's no accountability system for work orders, which is actually a resolution I wrote over the weekend for next week. I didn't want to bring too much before the body today. I picked the two I thought were the most important. And also, the person in this room who deals most with actual work orders, putting them in, getting them done, would be Staff Representative Paolucci, who's not here today. So next week, expect a resolution about how Rick needs some kind of work order accountability thing. When we put it into the system, where does it go? Does it go anywhere? Did they just toss it in the trash can? I guess I'm going to approve the resolution this week.
It's already on the table. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we now move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the resolution as amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions?
Yes, my lord.
And the resolution is approved as amendment. We now move to new business, item B, Innovation Office Resolution. President Smith.
Hi guys, it's me again. It's on the back. If you guys have been following the, what?
I just want to
Central
say,
Point?
sorry. Oh, I thought you needed a second and I wanted to say.
It's on the back of the agenda. Look at that. So if anyone's been following the news in the past month or so, there's been a bit of controversy for those who can read. As Lori would say, the Crow drove, for the rest of us, the Providence Journal. The state government of Rhode Island has elected to create an Office of Innovation as part of the governor's cabinet. What exactly this job is, it's to direct state innovation, high-tech jobs, technology. Your guess is honestly as good as mine on what they're actually doing. From what I've been told by administration, it has something to do with fundraising for the public institutions. But the way it actually works is this. It's considered a cabinet level position by the Rhode Island Governor's Cabinet, but it's actually paid for by the Rhode Island College Foundation. For those who've never heard of it, they had the 50th gala, I think, just last fall. It's a private nonprofit corporation legally that is devoted to fundraising for the college. I think I quote its core mission in the resolution. Its core mission is to raise money for the college to support the college mission and goals, which is, so essentially they raise money. It's when you donate to the college as an alumni, as Bill Gates, should you ever donate here, it goes into something, you don't donate it to Rhode Island College, you donate it to the Rhode Island College Foundation. It's like if you've ever noticed, your local libraries never do anything in and of themselves. They can't raise money for themselves. It's always the Friends of Blank Library. It's kind of the same idea. It's an outside organization devoted to fundraising money and then sort of giving it to whatever organization. So what's actually happening is the job in the state government called the Innovation Officer, his salary and benefits is being taken directly from the Rhode Island College Foundation, which is a pretty sketchy thing considering we just spent the last item agenda talking about how Rick doesn't have enough money for dorms, let alone anything else. So I wrote this resolution, hope that student community government could take a stand on it. For those of you who have listened to me talking, you could probably tell what I think about it. I'm not very unbiased when I talk. But as I state in the resolution, it's essentially Rhode Island College subsidizing the state instead of the other way around, which is to any higher point of a state institution. So before we open the floor discussion, just like with the last one, I'd like to read the resolution, Mr. Speaker. Whereas the Ronan College Foundation exists to raise funds solely for Ronan College in order to support the college's mission of providing a source of private income to offer quality, accessible higher education to traditional and non-traditional students. That's lifted directly from the foundation's portion on the RIC website. Whereas Governor Nuno and the state government of Rhode Island have appropriated approximately $250,000 of these funds annually for the purposes of employing a quote-unquote innovation officer. The base salary, I believe, is $250,000. There's a $500 a month car allowance, which means they could be spending, what is it, $6,000, right? The accountant in the room says I'm right. And then that doesn't include benefits, including health and pension. So it's actually more than the listed number, and we don't exactly have an exact number. It could be higher than $250,000. But before I go on, that's an exceedingly high amount. And if their sole purpose is to fundraise, and I'm going to go on my bully pulpit here, if their sole existence is to fundraise money for RIC, they're going to have to at least do $250,000 a year. And much like the college, the foundation doesn't have public books online. But just so the body knows. I'll continue. Whereas all students, alumni, faculty, staff, and other members of the campus should find this nefarious use of foundation money and antithetical? Mary, help. Antithetical. I wrote a different word, and I think my word was better. But my editor said no. The foundation's stated purpose, Ronan College is in dire need of renovations in existing buildings, such as the dorms. New buildings and other costs of this money could better serve. And whereas such a decision will further harm the fundraising abilities of the foundation in perpetuity, with President Carriola's untimely resignation, there is no one to take responsibility for this egregious waste of funds. Essentially going, President Carriola's resigned, so if students or faculty or staff wanted to complain, she's already at her job, so there would be no punishment or any kind of retribution coming her way. Whereas this use of foundation funds, it should read, is there. I'll make a friendly amendment for that in a moment, Mr. Speaker. That Rob's Ronan College have a better future, be it therefore resolved that the Student Community Government Incorporated announces this act is the purpose of public colleges to be funded by state governments. It's not the purpose of state governments to be funded by public colleges. I'll say one more thing before I ask for a friendly amendment of my egregious error. If I was an alumni who perhaps had money to donate to college and I found out the money was being used on the students, I would think twice about donating. And with me reading the resolution complete, and I'd just like to make a friendly amendment of changing the funds is theft, not as theft.
Well, first of all, we'll do a motion, main motion. The motion is by you, since you're saying the resolution. Second by Secretary Cepeda. Discussion. We'll start with President Smith again.
Can I ask for that friendly amendment?
Yes.
Can I have the friendly amendment? Foundation funds is theft that robs Ronan College of a better future. I would like a friendly amendment for that.
Is there any objection to the amendment? Hearing none, the amendment is accepted by the body as friendly. Further discussion. We have a list going already. Secretary Cepeda.
I have a question. I don't know how private nonprofits work, but why does Gina Raimundo have a say in how they use their funds?
They agreed to it.
Thank you.
There's actually, before we go on, I find this really funny. You all got in your email, actually, an email explaining why the college and the foundation is doing this. And I believe it's listed on the Ronan College website titled A Memorandum of Understanding. They give the official reasons, but they don't really explain how exactly the money is going to come back to RIC or benefit in any way. But I thought Memorandum of Understanding was kind of a well-aimed.
All right, thank you, Secretary Cepeda. Alumni Representative Sanitary.
Thank you, Speaker Lima. Years ago, we had a phrase in Parliament which is called breaking down the fourth wall when it came to talking about certain issues that is really, you don't really usually talk about, say, in this body or on college campuses because it's kind of an uncomfortable issue. And this is one of those issues, to say the least. And while I was sitting here earlier, while President Smith was speaking, mind you, I was listening to you, President Smith, but I wrote a lot about my thoughts on the matter, and I think it's stuff that maybe you guys haven't heard, and maybe things you need to know. I'm an alumni, and I have money I would like to consider donating to college, but President Smith is right. I'm one of those alumni who have serious concerns. And I think that this is going to do a lot of things to RIC that's going to be very negative. First one being, and this is just financial, it's going to negatively impact donations. And not just because Democrat versus Republican thing, it's a transparency thing. which I'll get to more, but that's really what it is. I think there's a couple things here. One, they raised tuition last year, right? Yeah, they raised
8%.
They raised tuition last year.
Ridiculous.
So they raised tuition last year, but they have money to spend on an innovation officer for $200,000 a year, plus a car allowance, plus benefits, which, being state job, very nice benefits. So not exactly too shabby, especially since he's not even from Rhode Island, I don't think. But that's beside
No,
the
he's a
point.
native. He's just been in DC for a couple years.
So, going on, other concerns. What kind of precedence does this set? Because now, if students let this go by, now the state can just come in any time and say, hire XYZ person and use your private funds to hire these people. Because once you let one person get hired on these guidelines, you open a door for who knows what in the future. So there's that. Faculty haven't been, I'm not sure the status right now, but faculty weren't unable to get a new contract for years now on this campus. Adjunct faculty have no benefits, but we have funding for an innovation officer. $250,000, I broke it down. If you take Rick's tuition right now, that can fund 60 full-time student scholarships. I ran the Projo, I believe it was, or Rhode Island Future, that could fund 4 full-time faculty members. Going off transparency, I'm just going to go over the place right now because there's a lot to say about this. Wasn't presented to Rick Council, wasn't presented to the AFT, wasn't presented to anyone before they actually did this. You have a whole bunch of issues, which includes, we just passed a resolution five minutes ago about wanting to go get a bond issue. How are the voters in Rhode Island going to feel when we go to voters in Rhode Island saying, please give us more money while we use donations from alumni and other people to fund a state job, a cabinet level job no less. Which, by the way, President Smith was right. The foundation is not subject to public record laws. And that means that you have no idea how that money is going to be used. John Marion of Common Cause, which is probably the top premier watchdog group in the state, has expressed very public concerns about this because of all the different things this opens up, all the Pandora boxes. It's just there's a lot of issues with this, and I think they just keep going on and on and on. And I really think that, I talked before about using your voice. This is an issue you guys should very much care about. And not just because it's $250,000, even if it was $100,000, you guys should care about this. Because you guys, pay higher tuition every year pretty much, unless they freeze it, and then don't worry, they'll get you back by 3 years later, raise tuition even more. So it really wasn't a tuition decrease, it was just, freezing it for a couple years. You guys have your conditions in your dorms, and then right now the college has a hard time getting swing space for everywhere. But they have $250,000 just to spend an innovation officer. I think that this is an issue you guys should all care about. And as an alumni, I know a lot of alumni, every single alumni I've talked to has expressed serious concerns about it. There's not one person I've talked to that thinks this is a good idea for a multitude of reasons. And, you're talking about issues you want to make yourself heard on. This is what I think SED should definitely make its voice heard on. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Representative Block.
Well, my first question is, why is this Rhode Island College's responsibility? Why is the state not just handling this themselves instead of shoving it on the school, a state school, no less? And why is a non-profit organization fronting this when their sole purpose should be benefiting the school, not patting each other behind the back in the legislative room saying, oh, well, you voted for this, I'll vote for your next bill. This takes $250,000 away from students, like Representative Venturi said, their scholarships for the future. That's 60 scholarships. I just think it's ridiculous to spend this much money on something that has nothing to do with us, yet we don't have the money for anything. Also, what is a car allowance?
They didn't really specify. I'm assuming driver, gas. He does have to travel.
All right, thank you, Representative Block. Next on the list is Representative Holman.
So I think it's my suite mate was telling me about this, and I was confused because it didn't sound like it was going to benefit us, and now seeing it on paper is making more sense. And the fact that a nonprofit is a part of it makes me very unfavored for this thing because nonprofits are supposed to be helpful and beneficial, and this is what I'm learning as a development major, and it's not supposed to be taking away from a school, because honestly, this job is going to take away scholarships, it's going to cause tuition to go up, and I purposely came to this school so my parents wouldn't have to pay as much, because my other two sisters went to private schools that were like astronomically expensive. So I don't see how this is going to benefit us, and I really don't think that they should say anything, because like it just doesn't seem all set out where you can see what's going to happen. Because the way my sweet mate explained it was that it's a long-term benefit, but like we need other things. Like we need to improve like housing. It's something that's more immediate, not something that's going to be down the road.
Thank you, Representative Holman. Treasurer Costa.
This is a very interesting topic that I personally don't feel the most knowledgeable about, so I find it very difficult to make a decision on this. I don't know about the rest of you, but when the email came through, I did read it because I was curious as to what this is, because I knew it would be something we'd end up talking about here. So I'm understanding everyone's points, I understand the resolution and where it's coming from, but I don't believe we are knowledgeable enough to make a final decision on this. It would be awesome if we could have someone from the Rick Foundation come and talk to us and explain it to it. Who knows, maybe get Mr. Culata or whatever his name is. I'm not wrong, it's Culata, C-U-L-A-T-T-A. I have the email pulled up right now, and there's one line I'd like to bring attention to. It reads, "It is important to note that the Innovation Office is responsible for raising the funds necessary to support its work and replenish the initial investment made by the Rick Foundation." Is that going to happen? I don't know. What exactly does that mean? I still don't know. I would just like to bring up the point that I think that this is a very, very big thing that we need to approach with an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Costa. Representative Rizzoco.
Being someone who relies greatly on scholarships and grants to go to school, I think this is bullshit, like flat out. And I'm wondering, what's our first step, and is there a website we can make a petition on? Surely. That's my point.
Would you like to move forward for a response? Or also?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just
Representative Rosario.
I just want to say first off, I think this is just ridiculous. And I'm sorry to say, but 60 scholarships, there's no justification in that at all. Considering we are a school that depends a lot on money coming in from federal resources as well as local resources. I'm not really sure what the direct benefits are to students, but I'm more concerned that $250,000 doesn't add up to what we're going to be getting out of this. So I'm kind of concerned as to what was the justification of accessible higher education to traditional and non-traditional students. I don't see how it adds up there.
Thank you, Representative Rosario. Representative
Roush, thank you.
Roush.
So I was curious. Yeah, I agree with not knowledgeable on the subject. So it's hard to discuss this in a knowledgeable way. But I'm just curious if anyone else, when they bring their discussion, could enlighten me on it. We're discussing now, but what sort of RIC oversight is there of this foundation? What sort of student oversight is there for this foundation? And how can students or other RIC faculty have a say or have some sort of involvement in the decision-making process for the foundation? Also, I'd like to see how the innovation, whatever job committee is, how it's helping RIC, or if it's not directly helping RIC and they're just going to pay us back our investment to them. When are we going to see that money? Do they have it written exactly when that money will be returned to us? On top of just the fact that we lost out on $250,000 in this year. So yeah, if anyone wants to add on that, that'd be great.
Thank you, Representative. Next on the list is Secretary Cepeda.
Kind of bouncing off what Representative Roush said, when Noah read the line from the email, it said it's just going to, one of the responsibilities to return the investment made. And I thought when I read the email, they said that they were going to bring different technologies to the campus benefit the college and do fundraising. But now I'm wondering, nowhere in that email it seems to me that it says they're gonna add to what we're making. It's just, we're gonna pay you back. We don't know when, like I said, we'll pay you back. Just keep them here for now, because we don't know what to do with them, but we'll pay you back. Another thing that I forgot, never mind then, but that was the main one. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Treasurer Cost?
I would highly encourage everyone to read the email that was sent to us. It has a lot of information in it. Again, I just keep skimming it over as we're all talking, and there's 4 bullet points that talk about how this will benefit the college campus. I'm just trying to play a little devil's advocate here. So if any of you are interested, it was sent to the entire RIC community on January 22nd at 1:49 p.m. The subject line reads, RIC launches Innovation Office. So if you would like to read at least a little bit more about it, then you can check out that email that was sent to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Sapita?
I remember the other part. So in the email, it also said that it's going to benefit higher education here in Rhode Island. But why, if it's benefiting all of public education here in Rhode Island, why aren't each of the colleges somehow contributing to this person's salary? That's also another big deal, because I don't see why Rhode Island College should be taking up the whole bill for something that might not even benefit us directly. Thank you.
Thank you. President Smith?
Okay, more discussion, guys? That was really great. Everyone else spoke. So the divisive issue, Treasurer Carson is correct. There's always another side to these kinds of issues. If you haven't checked the email, I encourage you all to read the email. And if you haven't been following the story on Promise Journal, they've been running it a lot in a couple of weeks. I know it kind of tapered off because Buddy Cianci died. Well, that's the moneymaker for Brogan these days. That's the bread and butter. It's what everyone's talking about. But it's still a very important issue that we need to discuss in college, because $250,000 is more than all of us pay in tuition. It's more than I'm sure Dr. Brooke Behrman makes. I'm sure it's more than Mary makes. And I'm sure if Mark and Dr. Kane were here, it'd be more than both of them make too. It's an immense amount of, well, maybe not Dr. Kane, but for the rest of us, it's a huge amount of money that not everyone, if they do all the tuition, or even how much they make from their on or off campus jobs, doesn't even come close to reaching. It's a big bite out of the foundation and of Rhode Island College resources. And Logan brought up a great point. We don't know when it's going to be paid back or if there's a time limit on it.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative Pizzoco?
I was wondering if we could table this to the next meeting so we can get to it more.
There would have to be a motion, second, and have to be
Second.
motion to table by Representative Pizzoco. Second. Second by Treasurer Costin. Any discussion? Discussion allowed, right? Yeah. Hearing none, we now proceed to a vote to table the resolution. All those.
Can I have one question before we go on?
Yes, discussion allowed. Yes.
What do you guys want to know more? Is there anything I can bring to you next meeting?
Want to you for questions? Yes, Representative Rowe.
It would be great if we could hear from someone or have somebody among us compile some research just so we understand more about the foundation. Preferably from someone.
We had a thing earlier about who appoints people to the foundation, and that would be President Carrie Hall. We'll be speaking hopefully sometime in the next month, so maybe that could be something we all could ask her. Just as a thought, but go on. What else did you have?
That was pretty much everything. Yeah.
All right, Representative Hurt.
I'd like to hear about other colleges, maybe even outside the state, that have innovation offices, see what they do, see whether they're well liked by their students.
Representative Pizzoco.
I'm wondering if there are any federal documents out to the public that we can possibly view.
Representative Holman.
Kind of to go off what was said before was like seeing, I guess, other schools' results, like seeing visual studies or graphs, just so we can see like, is it gonna work, is it not gonna work? Because it's one of those things where you want to research yourself before you say yes. You kind of know what's going to happen when you say yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Rosero.
I'd like to see more information as to what technology it is that they're proposing to the college and the cost and benefits of the technology.
Thank you. Any further discussion on tabling the resolution? Hearing none, we now move to a vote. All those in favor of tabling the resolution against the Innovation Office to the next meeting, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. abstentions, and the resolution is tabled. We now move on to updates and remarks. Dr. Kane is not here. Faculty update, Dr. Michelle Brophy.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just looking for my agenda that I have, because I wrote some notes on that as well. All right, so I have just a couple of things. One, I'm going to be me for a second, and I'm going to say tomorrow night in this room from 8 to 11, there's going to be an event that I want to plug, because it's Poli Sci Club student activities and Pi Sigma Alpha, which is the Clinical Science Honor Society. And these are the very cool t-shirts that they have. And if you come to this event tomorrow night, you'll get a very cool t-shirt. There'll be trivia, there'll be food and prizes and all kinds of stuff. And I think it's a great way to kind of think about politics. It is just Democrats, so some people may not want to go to the Democrats because they're Republicans or whatever, but they picked one that they could actually have during this whole night that would work out. So that's that. I also, as myself, this is before I become Dr. Kane for a minute. It's going to be really tough. I just wanted to tell you what you've been talking about with this Chief Innovation Officer has been something that faculty, especially faculty through the union, have been talking about. Professor Schmeling wrote a letter about this. I'm pretty sure this is the right issue, and it was something that was then discussed at the last open AFT meeting. So it is something that faculty are very, at least the faculty that I've heard from, are very concerned about too, because they don't know where it came from. You know, just kind of was there. All right, so those are my couple things that I wanted to say. And then the text, the handout that you have about the performance-based funding, it's two sides. What Dr. Kane wanted was to see if there were any kind of suggestions or feedback that this body had about these proposed performance funding metrics. So basically, this legislation allows for the college, and this is all three of the schools, to help come up with their own measurements or metrics by which it'll be determined if we as an institution can receive more funding or not. The idea is we'll get a certain amount that we always get, but then if we perform better, then we'll get more money. This may sound a little bit like No Child Left Behind. That's what it sounds like to me, and so it's that kind of idea: if you can do better, you can make more money. So these are the metrics that the team here at college, including Dr. Kane, have been working on. Because as we talked about at another meeting, and as I think a lot of us know, our student body is different from other student bodies. It's different, you know, all schools are different, but the graduation rates here are what they are for a lot of different reasons, right? And that's one of the ways that this performance-based funding is supposed to determine whether we can receive more funding, as if we have better student success, better graduation and retention rates. So those metrics there, if we went through them all, I guess, do you have any kinds of thoughts or reactions to these? This is what they want to propose to the, I guess, the commissioner. But for instance, the top one, the percentage of students making satisfactory academic progress is one that they're proposing, and you can see how that is currently measured by RIC, which is the bottom of that page. And then, of course, the next question would be if we kind of agree with these metrics, or have, you know, if we think, okay, these will make sense, then the next question would be how will these things be measured? But that's a whole other discussion. The percentage of students reaching, actually, if I just ask for your feedback on the first one, do you have any kind of things that?
Open it for discussion with the list going. Secretary Sapia.
The first thing is, I don't understand how we're supposed to improve student performance if we don't have more funding. To improve anything, you need more money. So it doesn't make any sense that they expect us to do better with what we have if it's not enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Zapata.
Need be, I guess, devil's advocate. I don't know if you have an answer now because you are not Dr. King. But say we do worse than what's expected, would that influence the income we get from those programs?
The way I understand it, and I just looked through this piece of legislation earlier, and spent a whole lot of time with it. I'm not sure if this has changed from the original proposal, the proposal that went through and was accepted by the Senate last year. But what it looks like is we wouldn't be punished,
Okay.
which is a good thing. And it looks like there'd be some time for, us to try to figure some things out. But that is definitely a concern. The next one, and of course, this isn't even talking about graduation. That's something that the commissioner's office, they want that to happen. But in the next one, number 2, the percentage of students reaching credit milestones at the end of the first year. I think the expectation that students would make 30 credits for full-time students, that doesn't seem too strange to me. But the next one, I don't know what your thoughts are about part-time students would have to achieve 15 credits per year. A lot of part-time students come in and take a class or 2, right? So are we going to, not get that extra funding because we have a lot of students who are going to only be taking 8 credits a semester? Should I just go through these and ask for comments of that, or do you just want to do them as?
I think we'll keep going on the list and back to you.
This third one, some measure related to certificates awarded if we are not able to include them in predetermined measure below. Where I believe this comes from, and I guess Dr. King will be able to address this better, is there's language in the performance-based funding bill that says that colleges need to demonstrate that they are making sure students are graduating and getting degrees in highly desirable fields, like engineering and STEM fields. And so the idea is if we can make more of those kinds of, get more students graduating with those kinds of jobs where, the argument is Rhode Island needs these kinds of jobs, then we would be benefited by that, all right? And so I think part of what this committee that's on campus is trying to do is say, well, we have some certificates. How do we count those in? Are some of those working towards some of these expectations? We have some majors like the medical imaging, majors. We've been trying to move that way, but this funding is always a course issue. And then 4, diversity among entering student body, racial, ethnic compared to Rhode Island high school graduates. 5, retention for first generation or low income students. And again, I don't know how these things will be measured, but these are the things that they think should be part of the metrics that they take to the Board of Education.
Thank you. We'll continue with the list. Representative Perry, some comments?
Oh, thank you. I wasn't expecting to go first. Now, I realize it's not Dr. Kate, that's what I said, but some feedback. This is not the first time I've seen a financial aid shot. We presented some sort of proposed law in front of me here in this room, and it's never been a good idea. I think the first problem here is with number 1, is what you're going to see is a race at the bottom. I know I'm not a student anymore, but at the same time, I can just see this happening. It's great inflation. Colleges will not have an incentive to fail students if their money is tied to, it's no child left behind, but on the college level all over again. It's what it's going to be. I also think that tying the financial aid definition to anything involving academic progress can be kind of hazy too, because what happens if they change the definition of financial aid? Because that automatically changes to performance-based funding. When then not everyone will always think about that. I think that 15 credits for a part-time student is ridiculous. I think that is probably the most ridiculous thing on this page, which is saying a lot. So there's a lot of ridiculous things to me. But I think it's saying a lot because that punishes inequality. I think, as you said, most students who are part-time will take 1, maybe 2 classes if they're lucky. It's actually something I was going to say later, where, not every, what Rick has always prided himself on is being the non-traditional college. You or I typically live on campus, you go there 4 years, you graduate maybe 5. or 6 if you're in the vet program. CCRI, you're out for 2 years, hopefully maybe 4 if you're taking a program there. Rick has always been trying to be welcoming to people who are older students, veterans, people who have less money, and that's always been something we prided this school on. But this right here is going to do 2 things. 1, it's going to punish the college for accepting those students. And 2, it's going to encourage a college like Rhode Island College, this is just a national thing, to not accept those students in the first place. Because it's going to push more students to do the 4-year track degree and be out of here in 4 years. But, I mean, and we're expecting, you know, these part-time students to suddenly go from taking 1 class a semester to maybe taking, 15 credits is what, depending on how many classes you take. 15 is also a weird number if every class is like a lot of 4-credit classes, it's just a weird number to me. I know there's a lot of 3-credit classes, but it just seems utterly ridiculous to me. Also, something else to think about, and this is another thing no one's really thinking about because, well, I care anymore about education in the state. 15 credits for a full-time student is not strange on the onset, but I think what I'd like to see for numbers is how many students currently at Rhode Island College, URI, or CCRI currently take 15 credits a semester versus 12 or 13 or 14 being full-time. When I was at Rick, I didn't take 15 credits a semester. Why? Again, because I had jobs and I had outside obligations outside of being a student. So again, this just punishes students for having jobs. I mean, I think it's hard to, I'm gonna find it very hard to believe to see a full-time student taking 15 credits a semester, depending on your major, especially depending on your major. Say you want to be a nursing major in particular, or even some other ones. Every major has its own trials and tribulations. But taking all those things, working, as many Rick students do, we've always prided ourselves being a working college, and then being able to do that. I think what you're going to see within 5-10 years is Rick being left down the cold, and that's going to happen. Because URI is going to get the lion's share of the money based on these metrics, and CCRI will eventually be free because community college, and Rick will kind of just be left on the corner. So that's it. I mean, the 5 and 4, I guess, is I don't see a huge problem with. But number 3 is also kind of weird and whirly. Certificates awarded. I mean, again, that's also just going to encourage colleges to spend their efforts toward trying to get awards as opposed to educating students. But again, education in the state. So that's all I have to speak here.
Thank you, Representative Byrd.
I think that listing any of these statistics would be good as far as transparency goes. I don't know the statistics for any of these, and I'm sure most students don't. So even if this doesn't get passed, it would be good to make this public information. Also, I'd like to know what a certificate is. And
That's yours. You're right. You're on the list.
Okay, so I can say.
Yes.
I did not read that book very well, or I didn't read Robert's Rules. The certificate, I didn't explain that. Have you heard of, for instance, there are several different programs, a certificate in nonprofit studies, a certificate in INGOs. There are a variety of different programs, and oftentimes what they are is people who are they're not students here, matriculated here, but they're working, they have a degree, but they want to come back and get a certificate. And that certificate looks good on the resume because it shows they did some coursework in a particular area. So what that's talking about is, you know, right now we don't really get any credit for the fact that we have those in terms of they're not really counted into the credits that students are taking because they're oftentimes not matriculated students. They're students who are people coming from the outside. So I think that's why they're talking about that.
Thank you. And Secretary.
You mentioned earlier the letter Dr. Schilling wrote. Is it possible for us to, is it possible for us to just, if you can bring it for the next meeting?
Yeah, I'm sure I can find it.
And the other thing is under treatment of W, I's, and F's. With W's and I's, it doesn't, for W specifically, it doesn't make sense to me that they be considered as credits attempted, because if you withdraw from a course, you don't complete it. So you'd be taking it again to get a better grade or to finish getting a grade, so it doesn't make any sense. If it's not counted into your GPA twice, I don't understand why it would be counted as credits twice. That's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on to discussion, Treasurer Cost.
So, Ellen and I, Representative Santuri, kind of said a lot of what I wanted to say, which was mainly about the 30 credits for full-time students and 15 credits for part-time students. I know myself, I've been a full-time student for the 3 years I've been here every semester, but my freshman year, I think I finished 26 credits. I think I was 14 and then 12 credits between the 2 semesters. So that automatically makes me a full-time, full tuition paying student, everything, who did get good grades, uneligible to be considered in this because I did not make the 30 credit mark. So I feel like that number is too high because there are a lot of students who work jobs or have families or things like that. So the part-time students can only take, 2-3 credit courses, and then even the full-time students still have to go home and take care of their families, go to work or anything like that. So it can be unmanageable for them to also take 15 credits a semester on top of it. We have the rule that once you're 12 credits, you're a full-time student. So I feel like that's what should be reflected on this. So maybe it should be 24 for the full-time students to do. Just a thought. Thank you.
Our next on the list, I think I saw Representative Rosario's card go up. Okay, Rosario.
So a few things. For number 2, the part-time students, 15 credits. I'm also going to say, just considering the population that we serve, it seems kind of ridiculous to put a 15 credit limit on that just because we have people who are older, who have kids, who have other responsibilities. And we pride ourselves on being a computer school, so I feel like that's counterintuitive. In terms of measures 4 and 5, I don't want to make it harder, but I do think that RIC prides itself a lot on the diversity and disability. We serve over 800 students with disabilities, and we also have a higher retention rate for students with disabilities, which might be something that would allow for more funding. So I wonder if that's something that should be counted with us, rather than kind of just be left aside.
Thank you, Representative Hall.
So I think 1 and 2 are ridiculous because I don't get any financial aid, and I just don't see the correlation between financial aid and having academic success because I've done well with pretty much nothing because they think that my parents make tons of money, but they don't. And then number 2, to be 30 credits to be full-time is ridiculous because my parents never thought I'd go to college because of the learning curves I've had to deal with. And the credits that I've taken so far as a full-time student, sometimes they've been a lot because it's hard sometimes. So to push that many credits on someone who has a hard time learning, that's unfair. Yes, you have to try hard and do well and be successful, but 30 credits, that's a little much. That's just my opinion, my life.
Thank you, Vice President.
Okay, from a future educator's point of view, I feel like the way this is currently set up is it's doing everything wrong that education could possibly do. Because 1, you're not being very precise when it comes to how you're going to measure things. The basic rule of education, you're writing lesson plans, everything has to be measurable in terms of how you're going to evaluate the students. And I feel like some of these things, like how, like what measures are going to use to, for relating to certificates awarded. You need to have specific measures for that. What measures do you want in terms of diversity that you're going to be coming, or for first generation or low income students? You need those specific measures. And another thing is, I think somebody mentioned this, I think actually it was Representative Hurd, how he mentioned about how, or maybe it was, I don't know who said it, but about how students are going to try to get work more for the awards than they are going for the education. And that's kind of teaching them like standardized education is. Your teachers are teaching the students to pass the test, not to learn something. So if you're putting that in there for them to have possible certificates, then they're gonna know there's a goal they can reach to get a certificate, and they're gonna get one. But what's the outcome in terms of they're learning something as well? That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm just being a little too strong on this because I am a future educator, but that's just what I see wrong with it currently right now. I think it has a good foundation. If this does pass and it does work, it just needs some tweaking. I'm finished.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Carlo.
Okay, so to live on campus, you need a minimum, or you need to be a full-time student, which is the minimum of 12 credits. If you did raise this up to 15 credits, you'd probably see a drop in people being able to live on campus, which would go to a drop in money for housing, which goes to drop into the other huge discussion that we had. So I can see this spiraling negatively in a bunch of different ways. I think that it has good intentions. It wants Rick students to leave Rick earlier than 5, 6, 7 years that it might take. So I think maybe rather than setting these sort of, I guess, restrictions or plans, we should work with the advisors of students to encourage Rick students to take more credits per semester to try and graduate earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Sapito?
Going off what Shane just mentioned about having people graduate on time, I know one of the things is, I believe it's the marketing major. Their plan isn't even 4 years long, I think it's 5 years long. And forcing students who are, let's say, first generation and low income students to have at least 15 credits a semester. These are students that are more likely to have full-time jobs outside of campus, have kids they need to attend to. So they might need to drop out of school because they have other responsibilities outside of Rick. What was the other one? I know music majors, it's difficult because they have like a bunch of 3 credit courses. The education program, it takes forever sometimes to even get through that. Going on for 12 credits, since it's the definition of full-time students, would we have to change our definition of what a full-time student is if this goes through? And how would that affect the financial aid for students here who can't take on that workload? I know if you read through the student manual, for every 4 credit course, you can have, I think, between 4 and 8 hours of homework. If you do up that math, that's more than a full-time job, so you can't expect people to have a job, go to class with that many credits and do all that homework and still be sane. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Representative Brewer?
I think that point 2 is redundant, seeing as Rhode Island College already has an incentive to encourage more full-time students. And that's because full-time students pay more than part-time students. Tuition costs more when you take more credits. Yeah, so I don't think that's a good metric.
Representative Holden?
So the whole idea of finishing college on time, I think is really overrated because everyone is different. We all figure out what we want to do at different times. We all learn differently. So telling someone you have to finish in 4 years is really hard because what if you change your major 3 different times like I did? I had no idea what I wanted to do. So the fact that I can graduate in 5 years, that's great. But you don't want to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to do this in this many years because you're not going to be able to enjoy or learn. You're just going to be so focused on graduating in 5 years. And like my dad, he's like, oh, 5 years, like it's a long time. No, it's not. And a lot of schools, you don't even graduate in 4 years because of your program. My sister was an LEd major. She just slipped by and was able to graduate in 4 years. So I think having a time set isn't exactly true because like you don't finish 4 years when you're going to be a doctor. You have to go through your residency and all those sections just to be a doctor, and it takes a while.
All right, first before we continue, do you have any response or?
Just a couple. I wanted just to clarify. I mean, what it is with these metrics, they're just the committee on campus is just trying to figure out the best way to live up to what the performance-based funding is asking. And it's the performance-based funding, which is now in 30 states, and it's been pushed by the federal government, is all about trying to get people out of school more quickly. That's a big part of it, and to have them be able to get out and get high-paying jobs. And so that's the real push behind it. And so it's not as though anybody would be forced to do any of these things. What it is that if, for instance, the Board of Education accepted the idea that progress is students who have 30 credits a year if they're full-time and 15 credits a year if they're part-time, that means they would have to, our institutional research board would have to count up the number of students who are, getting 30 credits or doing 30 credits in a year, and the number doing 15 credits for part-time, and then they would have to look at the number who were doing fewer than 30 as full-time and fewer, and then they would have to say here's the percentage of people who are actually getting those 30 credits or those 15 credits, and then that's going to go, and the idea is we would be able to show improvement over time, that we'd have more and more people. But I think what you're all talking about, and I agree with, is this isn't the school, it's not Brown, it's not a lot of other, it's not URI, it's not the kind of school that is really gonna ever be able to have the kind of graduation rates that the federal government is pushing for unless you change your student body and your mission.
All right, further discussion for your announcements, Representative Locke.
Yeah, going based off what Secretary Speed said, the LM major is 150 credits, and I believe the graduation is 140 credits to graduate. 120, so that's 30 credits. That's it's impossible to do in 4 years. I know for me, the secondary ed major is 4 years without even taking into consideration all the gen eds we have to take.
Breathing.
So I think if you want to talk about tying in graduation rates, I think that needs to have a completely different discussion on how the programs are run in general. Just the performance-based funding in general, it's like Alone Representative Secretary said, it's No Child Left Behind all over again. No Child Left Behind put all the bad press on the teachers, and this would be putting all the bad press on the school, saying you're doing a bad job, you're doing a bad job.
Any further comments? Further discussion, Secretary Cepeda.
You mentioned earlier with the incentive to have more students in STEM programs. It reminds me of high school where they were cutting back music ed programs, art programs. They're telling people this isn't worth your time. Maybe it's what you love to do, even though you're coming here and paying to do this. We're not going to promote you going into these majors, which is a horrible thing to do because you don't want to suppress anyone's education. Another thing is having students graduating in 4 years, like Josh mentioned, it would make it so the different programs here would have to change their maps for graduation, and that would definitely lower the standards that our programs set because students would be leaving here with a lack of knowledge of what they're going into.
Further discussion, Representative Santeri.
Thank you, Speaker Lima. Secretary Cepeda and Representative Locke just kind of stole what I was about to say to a degree, but I'll try and phrase it a different way. And this actually relates back to what Dr. Bushman does here on campus and trying to work with different departments and getting academic mapping in place and everything. And if we can't even get the departments to get programs in place to get students out in 4 years' time, this whole conversation is going to go by the wayside no matter what. Secretary Cepeda is right. The level of knowledge now required for a college degree, especially in some fields, education, nursing, in other areas, is hard to do in 4 years, especially if you're working. And I think that you're going to end up sacrificing one of two things. You can either you can do it in a timely manner or a quality manner. And I think if you're going to sacrifice quality in order to just raise the numbers up like that, then this whole conversation is and what's the word used in your resolution? Intentical to all the whole. I pushed that. It's against the entire point of us being here in higher education. It's against the whole point. So I think that unless I know there's a lot of conversation to be had still about this topic, but I think there are just so many questions that I don't know. Thank you, Speaker Lehman.
Further discussion, if you want to interject at any time. Representative Crowe.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I just think looking at it and sort of the 4 year pressure of graduating in 4 years, I just think it doesn't line up with the reality of the situation for many students at Rick. Partly demographic, and that's obviously something we don't want to change, and we want to have a diverse student body. And aside from that, other variables that go into not making 4 years until graduation possible are things like the lack of a strong advising program for students and lack of available classes, so people have to wait an extra year, an extra semester to take the class required for graduation. So I think there are steps to be taken first for this. Thank you.
Thank you, President Smith.
Well, first I'd like to thank Dr. Brophy-Behrman for being willing to take Dr. Kane's place. I know it's a little out of her depth of field because it is not her job to deal with this kind of policy. I know she's an educator, and from working with her that she likes performance-based funding as much as any other educator or future educator. As a result of someone in this room, I remember when I was in high school when No Child Left Behind was still a thing. This is it's showing my age in a slight detour. It's a funny story. My year was the first year they had to do the senior capstone project or whatever. all the teachers hated it, and they hated that they had it. So when everyone passed at the end of my senior year of high school, they made shirts that said, "This child was not left behind." They were so mad. But seriously, it's an important issue, and I wanted to take a moment to thank Dr. Brooke Behrman for assuming Dr. Kane's role. I know it's a little bit overwhelming because this is really Dr. Kane's wheelhouse, but thank you for choosing to throw yourself on that spike. I hope he volunteered, and he didn't Shanghai or volunteer for you.
No comment.
I had a feeling from my phone call with him. Overall, this has been a great discussion. Anyone who's talked to me for more than 2 minutes knows I hate performance-based funding. I think it's the antichrist of education. For all the reasons we've listed, and all the reasons we've listed, everyone who said anything in this room has had a very good thing to say. We all know Rick isn't a 4-year school. I've been here for a certain number of years, which is north of 4, but south of a decade, of which I'm not specifying in minutes. But it's a non-traditional school, and we should always be proud of that. We have veterans. We are ranked number 10 for a veteran school. President Carriol likes to tout that number all the time. We're rated number 6 and best bang for the buck on the website, which makes me sound like a job lot catalog. But seriously, all jokes aside, this is something that's going to keep coming up in your own lifetimes, and it's going to keep coming up in your kids' lifetimes. And I want to commend everyone for all the good comments. And stop laughing, Tom. No, this is seriously a serious issue, which is why I had it brought before the body today. My only wish is that Dr. Kane had been here to answer some of our questions. Everyone has great questions, and I think all of us in this room and everything we've talked today are a little bit out of our depth of field. Because you all have great questions, and I don't think Dr. Brooks would bear me by any means enough. Thank you for being here and doing this. But it's all just a little bit beyond us, and I swear I had something else to rant about. But I lost myself. Shut up, Mary. Okay.
All right, with further discussion still, Vice President Passing.
I'm just gonna say something that I think everybody realizes that this, while it could work, I'm not saying it's the right thing or not, but if this is going to be passed, whoever came up with this needs to rewrite it to fit Rick more. I mean, every issue that we've come up with so far is because it basically doesn't fit the Rick parameters of the kind of school we are, the kind of student body we have. So if they can just morph it more to fit Rick, I think it would work better in the long run. I'm not saying I'm gonna stay neutral in terms of whether or not it should be passed, but if they can put that effort in, I think it would make a big positive difference.
Discussion, we still have more on the list. Secretary Cepeda.
Going off what Vice President Sebastian just said, the problem is that the federal government doesn't want to fit Rick. They want us to fit what they demand. So I don't see them anywhere being no wiggle room whatsoever. Another question I had was, how would graduate students be accounted into this equation?
I don't think that they are considered at all in this. I don't know if there's been a push for accountability in graduate schools.
All right, President Smith.
I remember my thing, and I'm bringing up the exact language now. I looked this up when I was making the resolution about the Innovation Office in the Rowan College Foundation, and something President Centuri said reminded me of it about how, yeah, I said President. My Representative Centuri, thank you, Tom, said is that the college is actually trying to get rid of the non-traditional students that were not about the veterans and the part-timers, people whose English is not its first language, or working moms and dads. And let me see if I can find it here. But it actually listed in either the Rowan College mission statement or the Rowan College vision statement that where Rowan College is here for both traditional undergraduate students and non-traditional undergraduate students. So by accepting something like performance-based funding, where you're clearly trying to shuttle out all the quote-unquote undesirable students or the non-traditional students that you don't want because it makes your bottom line to foundations, to state governments look bad, you're changing the mission and the entire point of Rowan College. The staff member here, Rick, a couple of years ago, the anchor got really mad about this, and that can go into minutes, called Rowan College a working class college. It's true. I work my way through Rick. I pay my way through Rick. I know Speaker Lima also pays his way through Rick, and I know many other students who are paying their way through Rick. My parents don't make enough financial aid, his parents don't make enough financial aid, and there's a lot of students like that who pay their way through school or take out loans but don't have enough. And if we're the non-traditional kind of students who, if Rick didn't exist, we probably wouldn't have a college education. CC's not enough in your eyes, just out of our price bracket. So again, I'm going to say this again, everything we've talked about today is fantastic, and ultimately this is sort of changing the foundation of what Roman College is and has been, and what college is. And that concludes everything I have to say for this.
Thank you. No further discussion. The floor is still yours, Dr. Freeman. If you have any
The last comment I would make is that there are faculty, including Dr. Schmeling, he's real active in a lot of things, and Dr. Erickson in history, and they have been researching this. They have a paper coming out soon about this, and they actually got involved in testifying before the legislature last spring. And that's why right now you all are being invited to participate. And if you look at the language of the bill, it says students and faculty can help shape what those metrics will be, what they're going to look like. And so it's much improved over the last year's version, where it was kind of like, you'll just do this, this is what you need to do. So this is all in development.
Thank you. I think Secretary Cepeda.
Is it possible, like aside from the letter that Dr. Schmeling wrote for him, I forgot who the other professor you mentioned
Eric
was.
Christensen.
Is it possible for them to maybe come in and educate us on the topic?
I know they will too.
Yeah, I imagine they'd love to. Thank you.
All right. Any further announcements? All righty. Discussion. Next is alumni update. Robert Centauri Jr.
Thank you, Speaker Lima. I've been on my soapbox a lot tonight, guys. I somewhat apologize. And I'll only be on one more time, I swear. But first, I hope your classes and exams are going well, as we're already into February. Tick, 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 tick. If you listen close enough in the background, you can hear that the clock's slowly moving on as we get close to the end of the semester. Which means, of course, what that means is elections for SEG, and leadership for next year and all that. Keep in the back of your mind. You guys, all of you in here tonight, obviously are very passionate and care. And I think the critical thing to keep in mind is making sure that the leadership, and the current leadership is going to make sure of this, I'm sure, is making sure that next year's board is very much well set, and there's a lot of continuity, and just trying to get your friends involved and all that, and trying to get them to be passionate about this issue, which I'm about to go into in a second. And the thing I just want to say, to wrap up what I'm going to say tonight, is that you guys, all of you hit upon it in your own points in some way or the other. The next year here at Rick, the next 365 days, is going to be the most transformative at Rick in the last decade we just had, and the next decade we just had going forward. And that is why the student voice is so critical at this time, and particularly student community government and your voices. You guys are here tonight on Wednesday night because you can. Not every student at the school, as we all talked about, non-traditional sense, has that luxury. And it's up to you guys not just stand up for yourselves, but them too, because they don't have that voice. They can say it. It's great seeing you guys get excited about these issues. I'm a policy wonk, I guess you call it. So seeing you guys get excited about these sort of issues is great. And what's great about it is because these are the issues you guys care about. And this is what I always hammered on when I was president, and speaker, and just a member, and now just alumni rep, is finding what you are passionate about. This is what SEGs exists for. Finding issues you're passionate about and talking about it. And a lot of you tonight have said, I'm mad, I'm angry, pissed off. Good. I'm glad you're pissed off. Do something with that. Go beyond what we're talking about on Zoom tonight and do something with it. Do a petition. Camp out on the lawn. No. Do something with that, though. Advocate for something you're passionate with, for or against. If you want to talk about rebel raising, writing a resolution, finding something, I know President Smith is more than happy to give you a lending hand at or anyone else sending exactly.
I way more for next
And that's the thing is, you guys want to be involved on this. Talk to him about what resolutions coming, what ideas he has, or your own ideas, and get it going. Because we talked for 2 hours now, and that's just on 3 issues. And these are 3 big issues, and there are a ton more on this campus, because I talked to all of you outside this room, and I know we all have them. And, what you do with that passion can change this campus. And, again, where's the voice of the student body? And it's up to us to do that. And I know each of you have that in you to do it. So, this is great tonight, and I hope you guys keep it up next time. So, thanks, Steve, for speaking to me.
Thank you. We now move on to 9, appointments, resignations, and vacancies. President Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple of appointments and then get on to the resignations. I'm appointing Patrick Kerr to the Student Parliament seat on the Bylaws and Beautification Commission. I am appointing Thomas George Lima to the other Brick Council seat alongside myself. It's the one that's meeting on Friday, where the Brick version of SCG. I'm also appointing Thomas George Lima to the Traffic and Party Committee. I ask that these appointments be accepted with unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, the appointments are made with unanimous consent.
And I do have some resignations, unfortunately. I'll read them all off. First comes from Zachary Deutsch. Deutsch, that was good, okay. From Conditions and Services Committee due to scheduling conflicts. I have 2 more resignations, actually. Connor Gerlach is resigning from, I believe, all of student government due to a scheduling conflict. He writes, "Thank you very much for the opportunity and good luck with the sessions." And I have 1 more resignation from Juliana Lima from the Conditions and Services. Yes, she's resigning from Conditions and Services. And I ask that these resignations be accepted with unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, all 3 resignations are accepted with unanimous consent.
All right, and for vacancies, we have a lot of vacancies now, obviously. For Deputy Speaker Cronin has had resignations drop on from Conditions and Services. But I've been slowly making my way through you guys and the rest of the student body about joining an SCG committee, or more importantly, a college committee. We still have a lot of seats left available, so like alumni representatives and jury said, find the thing that makes you mad on campus and complain about it. And I'll be finding you shortly sometime in the next couple of weeks before we get something. And that concludes that portion.
Thank you. We now move on to issues of Parliament members. Please keep your cards hard. If I can go around the room. I think that's it. We'll start with Secretary's opinion.
Oh, okay. So first off, program evaluations, my favorite thing. I'm actually going through it now, as you know, as Treasurer Carson mentioned before, budget hearings are next week. So one of my jobs is to write a brief recommendation to the Finance Commission, and I can only do that based off your program evaluations. So far, I've only received 8 clubs program evaluations. So for everyone else, it's no evaluation, no evaluation, no evaluation. So as far as finance knows, you've done nothing with the money you've been given. So make sure you turn those in so that finance can see that the funds that have been allocated to you are used appropriately. And have those in before the 29th too, so you can be on the eligible event list for the Stories Awards. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next on the list is Representative Rosario.
Hey guys, so talking about finding something you're passionate about and getting mad about it. Today I sent out a formal letter to President Cariolo and a few of the deans regarding snow removal and some ADA considerations that have not been considered while we were dealing with Friday and Monday and Tuesday. Unfortunately, I got the response that I expected, not the one I hoped for, and I kind of got stonewalled a little bit. So I'd like to hear more from the body, whether it be after the meeting, if you want to stop me or email me or whatever it may be. If you see something that does not comply with accessibility, so for example, if one person cannot make it to a building, automatically that is not accessible. It's not just about whether you use a wheelchair or a cane, which mind you, I've seen people walking with white canes on ice, and I think my head was ready to blow off. But if you see something that is not accessible, please let me know as soon as possible, because I'm compiling a list of complaints, because I don't know what else to do at this point. So.
Thank you. Representative Locke.
I was just going to actually just mention the same thing, that the snow removal was poorly done, to say the least, as well as the plowing of the res lot and the lot in front of Sweet. It took away at least 50 parking spots from just piling snow in the middle of the res lot, and the sidewalks as well are almost entirely sheets of ice. And I think it's ridiculous to have to run the risk of slipping and falling walking into class.
Thank you, Representative Salvini.
Thank you, Speaker Lima. What I have to say runs analogous to what Alumni Representative Santuri had brought up in regards to how we develop as individuals and as an entity over the next couple months. We are a voice for the student body at Rhode Island College. And to be honest, I'm extremely grateful to how we conduct things. You know, we're not always formal. We have moments of character and personality, and that's honestly fantastic. But what I want to talk about is being selective about what we have to say, what we could bring to the table and to this room. We talked today about how we felt about the dorms, which is completely fine. I am agreeing with most of you, all of you. When we regard the dorms as a war zone, that's fine. But when we regard it as a place like Detroit or a place like Syria, it's a little bit much, in my opinion. That is an opinion. But if I were someone who was from Detroit, who had family in Detroit, or in Syria, and to equate it to a war zone, it may be hurtful. To say that's the way it's like in a dorm where we live in here in America, it's a different matter. And I would just like to ask us to just consider the fact that although we've heard this from the student body, and we are a representative of the student body, if we are to be more selective about what to say in this room, that would be something that we'd all learn to develop into. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is President Smith.
Well, I want to give 2 shout-outs. First to Anchor TV for covering every Parliament meeting this year. They always have such a wonderful look in their faces. And the second was to actually Representative Rosario. He CC'd me on the email that he sent President Cariolo, who's very quick with response, I was proud to say. I actually just finished meeting with her right after we had sent it and she responded. And I was also, I'd just like to reiterate, I was also disappointed in the response that Representative Rosario got. I'm sure if Dr. Kane was here, he could perhaps do more. But essentially what the administration did was just quote back Rhode Island College handbook policy to him. So I just want to commend him for writing an articulate letter to President Cariolo and bringing it before the body. And I want to encourage not only just Representative Rosario, but also other people on the body to also take up this issue as well. I didn't know, for instance, until we started talking about the dorms, that there was a handicap room in a building that did not have handicap access. So today I learned. Just a couple other things, guys. I know being alumni representative Centura, I've been following it recently, but it's primary season in America, so I hope no matter what your political affiliation is, what your political involvement is, for at the very least, please at least keep track of current events and who's going to be the next president of the country, or perhaps what the state of your government is. We all live in this nation, and it's good to be involved and be engaged and pay attention to current events so you have an idea what's happening. Please don't be like my poor mother, who, when I told her I had an internship in one of our senators' offices, she asked, what is he? I don't know. So please be engaged, be a thoughtful citizen, and just be part of your larger community. And lastly, this is something that's more relevant to me and Speaker Lima, but tomorrow night at the Spot Underground, 90.7 WXIN is having its Valentine's and Baseline Valentine's Day party. I can see Anchor TV applauding in the background. It's going to be a lot of fun. The new Spot is a wonderful venue. They've really improved for me. The last one was pretty good. It's going to be a fun time. There is a cash bar. If you are of age, those of you in the room who are, I believe we'll have a couple of overseas dates doing. It'll be a good time. Bring your date. If you don't have a date, come down and have some fun with ourselves. I know a whole bunch of us will be there. And that concludes everything I have to say.
Thank you. Treasurer Carlson.
So I originally wrote down one point, and then people kept talking, and then I kept writing down more points. So to segue off some other people, what Representative Locke said about the residence halls with the snow. If you went back to the resident hall right now, you would see what's supposed to be straight line of parking do a giant hook because they didn't plow the resident lot before asking us to move our cars. So we then packed down all the snow for moving, walking, driving, and all of that, slid down the hill to get to the lot across from Sweet Hall, and then skidded back up the hill and moved back to the res lot, all before the storm was over. So we couldn't even see the lines for parking. So right there, that takes down dozens of spots because we literally cannot see the line. So we're all doing our best guess, trying to just park as close as we can to the person next to us. So there are cars right now that are blocked in because one of the center lines was moved over so far that they can't back out of their spots. So they had to tow a car earlier today just for one person to be able to get out. Things like that are kind of ridiculous. But happier note, it was really nice to see so many people being active and have active voices on the body tonight. Meetings this semester have been happening relatively quickly, and not a lot of people talk as deeply as we did tonight, so I was really proud to see so much discussion and debate about all of the issues that were brought to the table today. So kudos, and let's hope that we can keep that on for the rest of the semester. And then on a happier note, like President Smith said about WXIN, I wanted to give a little shout out to the ballroom dance team. We just went to a competition this past weekend, and we had many members of the club do fantastic. The team has gotten so much better and has grown by leaps and bounds. We had people place up into higher levels than what they were, bring home first place ribbons. It was really a fantastic weekend. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Crum.
He's being modest. No one went up to gold this weekend. Noah went up a higher level because Noah's awesome. Anyway, I want to build off what Noah said. The three issues that were brought up tonight brought up the best discussion that I've experienced as a part of Parliament. That's why I joined. I really started to get a feel what it's all about. So thank you for bringing those to the table. Another little shout out to Ballroom Dance is we will be having our 4th annual competition on April 10th. It is a Sunday, so if you have the time, please make it out to Rosen of Patuxent in Cranston, Rhode Island. I will be talking more about it. You will see advertisements around campus, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you, Representative Hurd.
I saw something today that made me do a double take. I walked to the galley across campus just to hang out, and then when I was walking back, right by the tennis courts, there was a handicap spot, and it said van accessible. There was a sign below it. It was full of snow. That is not van accessible. Yeah, so that's a giant issue. Also, there's a club car, one of the grounds cars. I don't know what they use them for, but there was driving around. It was on the sidewalk. A person in a wheelchair can't get through there. Also, I'd like to advertise chess club meetings. We're now on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. in the cafe. Hope to see you there.
Thank you. Representative Frisoko.
I'd like to build off what Representative Lazar was saying. I have a friend in the dorms I talk to almost every time I sit at the front desk, and I sit there for 5 hours. And she told me that she had to wheelchair through the streets yesterday and the day before. And coming from a town that just lost 2 people due to tree limbs killing them in Canton, Mass, like that's a serious issue. I mean, she's at serious risk right now, like having to maneuver through, like we talk about ourselves who have 2 feet that we can walk on ice skating through campus. That's a major issue. And when she told me that, my mouth dropped and I didn't know what to say to her.
Thank you, Representative Holman.
So I was actually talking to someone about the parking lot. They fell, right on the ground, and I've slipped numerous times, and it's we're supposed to be parking lots are not safe. Since they're not safe, they should be kept as best as to their condition as possible. So people falling on 2 feet or in wheelchairs, that shouldn't happen. That should not be a thing.
Thank you, Representative Rosario.
I promise this is the last time. I do want to point out that something was, and I'm going to quote this because I remember it. I was told that the first things to get plowed are the ramps and the handicap entrances. First of all, I'll leave it up to your discretion to question that if you'd like. But to build off of what Representative Frisoko was saying, last year during the winter, I had to go down a one-way street the opposite direction on black ice with the car coming towards me. So just picture that scenario and imagine 1 little inch, and it could have been a really bad hit. So,
thank you. Seeing any more issues of politics members? Seeing there are none, there's only one motion left in order, and that is a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Secretary Carlson, second by Deputy Representative. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Abstentions, and we are adjourned. Please stay seated and silent for roll call.
Robert Smith.
Here.
Maria Zapasnik.
Here.
Lori Cepeda. Here. Noah Karsten.
Here.
Thomas Lima.
Here.
Shane Krellen.
Here.
Leandro Alvarez.
Here.
Gilbert Perez.
Here.
Brittany Brzoko. Here. Nicole Cerrutia. Emma Holman. Here. Patrick Hurd.
Here.
Joshua Locke.
Here.
Logan Roush.
Here.
Jose Rosario.
Here.
Kenneth Salhany.
Here.
Jason Windrow. Scott Kane. Michelle Brophy-Bierman. Mark Padalucci. Robert Santeri.
Here. Thank you. Have a good night.
Don't forget to recycle.